Rise to your highest being. 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 Hi, welcome back. You know, the purpose behind this program is to prepare you for strengthening your spiritual connection so that you can survive what is coming. Now, we're in the middle of a spiritual war, and in order for you to come out of that spiritual war on the other side intact, you're going to have to be ready. You need to be spiritually connected in order to withstand the trials ahead. You need to be properly aligned with the divine spirit and locked into the peace of infinite intelligence so that you are divinely protected. Now, many of us here in the metaphysical community are getting the message that a planetary shift in consciousness is imminent. It's about to take place sometime in, I don't know, the near future. Can't give you when exactly. But until then, life is expected to get more difficult before it gets better. So those who are not spiritually connected are going to suffer the most. So one of the things that is critical for you to understand and to exercise is forgiveness. Forgiveness. Now, to explain it in mundane terms, forgiveness is like a pair of skis. With them, you glide over the deep snow of turmoil and conflict and stress, but without them, you struggle through that snow up to your thighs. And in conditions like that, forward progress is slow and is exhausting, and eventually it overwhelms you and you become stuck. Forgiveness. Forgiveness is the way out. Now, in the days of our barbaric past, forgiveness as a human concept was unheard. Only God could forgive. So human beings expressing forgiveness actually only comes up once in the Old Testament, and that's the biblical story about Joseph and his brothers who sold him into slavery because they were jealous of the extra love and attention that his father was giving him. And that supposedly happened about 3,600 years ago. So Joseph, sold into slavery, went on from being a slave to eventually to becoming the second most powerful man in Egypt. He reported directly to the Pharaoh. And during his time in power, he helped to save not only Egypt from famine, but also the surrounding countries. And his brothers in one of those surrounding countries were saved from famine, his brothers, his family. And upon meeting them and letting them know who he was, he forgave them for what they did. And he forgave them with the words, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." Because if they hadn't sold him into slavery, he would have gone on to be just an ordinary guy in an ordinary family. But because he was sold into slavery and taken away to faraway lands, he eventually became a very powerful man. So except for that story, that example of Joseph, the belief of most humans over the past few thousand years was an eye for an eye. An eye for an eye. Basically revenge. Revenge was the order of the day. But as Martin Luther King Jr. said, that old law about an eye for an eye leaves everyone blind. And the time is always right to do the right thing. So Jesus sought to bring us into a world where we do the right thing. And that right thing is a higher spiritual consciousness. That right thing is love. That right thing is forgiveness. So instead of a revenge-centered, excuse me, I had Bell's palsy that I'm still getting over. So my mouth doesn't quite work all the time. But anyway, instead of the revenge-centered mindset of an eye for an eye, Jesus taught love and forgiveness. Love and forgiveness. The trouble is, most people don't know what forgiveness is. They didn't then, and they don't actually know now. Many of them saw forgiveness as the practice of people who were afraid to fight, because we're coming out of an evolution. We're evolving out of a state of warriorhood. If you were deemed valid, or if you could fight, if you were a warrior, if you could kill without qualms, either with a sword or in the Old West with a gun. So forgiveness was seen as a weakness. Christians accepted it as something they should do, but they did it because that's what the teachings of Jesus told them to do. It wasn't like they really understood what they were doing. They not only didn't understand the mechanics of it, but they didn't know what to expect from it. Finally, though, so we're talking thousands of years. Since Jesus was around, that's 2,000 years. But finally, in the late 1990s, a change began to happen. A couple of university professors decided to find out what this thing called forgiveness is and how it works. Their names were Dr. Robert Enright, who was a professor at the University of Wisconsin, and Dr. Fred Luskin, who was a professor at Stanford University. Now, interestingly, they were in different parts of the country. They worked independently, not with each other. They both had the same idea at the same time. Coincidence? I don't think so. It was at this time that infinite intelligence probably decided that it was time that we began to understand this concept of forgiveness and to learn how to work with it and learn what the benefits of it are. So they began the work of studying forgiveness and finding out how it worked and what it did. Since then, since the 90s, when their work began, there have been dozens and dozens of research projects on the subject of forgiveness and the effects of forgiveness, as well as the dangers of unforgiveness. Science now even has a definition of forgiveness. Let me read it to you. Forgiveness as a core positive psychological and moral construct is defined as a complex, affective, cognitive, and behavioral phenomena in which negative affect and judgment towards one offender are reduced, not by denying one's rights to such affect, but by viewing the offender with compassion, benevolence, and love. It's quite a definition. Dr. Enright describes forgiveness in terms of what he calls a triad, a three-legged process. One is forgiving others, two is obtaining forgiveness for yourself, and three is self-forgiveness. Now for me, that scientific definition is fine. In fact, I guess it's necessary in order for doctors and psychologists to identify with it and use it and apply it. But for me, it's a much simpler explanation. I describe forgiveness as letting go. Just letting go. Letting go of the negative emotions that accompany an act which causes pain and hurt and injury. Letting go. Letting go of the negative emotions that can destroy you. Letting go of the negative emotions that can destroy your mind and your body. Actually, I see forgiveness as a somewhat magical process. You see, when you forgive someone, you are opening your life to the spiritual flow of energy. See, because unforgiveness, being a negative reaction, a negative emotion, closes you down so that nothing flows. But forgiveness opens you up and allows the flow of energy. Okay, so you're choosing between being shut down like a rock or opening up like a flower in bloom. So forgiveness, please don't misunderstand. Forgiveness is not letting that person who hurt you off the hook. Not at all. What forgiveness is doing is it's relieving you of a dangerous burden. Here's what I mean. Usually when someone hurts you, there's anger, emotional pain, and sometimes physical distress. This is followed by a period of adjustment and hopefully healing. Unfortunately, that period of adjustment involves replaying the event in your memory until you get through the darkness of it. Because every time you replay it, your mind, your body, your emotions go through the pain of it again. But each time you repeat that process, it is supposed to get easier until eventually you are healed. That's what's supposed to happen. Unfortunately, we're human beings. And so a lot of us human beings, that repetition doesn't heal. It only makes the hurt worse. It only makes the anger stronger as time goes by. And so if you're unable to release your attachment to those negative emotions, they become a destructive force in your life. Now, according to Dr. Philip Lipton, who wrote a book called The Biology of Belief, the biochemistry of unforgiveness can be devastating to the body. You see, what you may not realize is that every time you churn up those negative reactions, your body generates a destructive bath of damaging internal reactions and corrosive chemicals. Corrosive. They burn you up inside. And what's so ironic about it, totally ironic, is that the people who hurt you, the person who hurt you, the person who caused all this anxiety, anger, and pain, is not affected by any of this. Not affected. That person is going on with his or her life, totally oblivious to what you're going through. They're living rent-free in your head. According to a writer named Lori Johnson in an article called "The Deadly Consequences of Unforgiveness," she says unforgiveness is now classified in medical journals as a disease. Let me repeat that. Unforgiveness is now medically classified as a disease. A disease. So being unable to forgive can make you sick. Being unable to forgive can make you sick, and it will keep you that way as long as you are unable to forgive. Now, what medical science has also discovered is that harboring these negative emotions, this anger, this hatred, this resentment, can create a state of chronic anxiety, also known as chronic stress. And chronic anxiety can diminish your ability to think clearly. Why? Because it shuts down the cerebral cortex of your brain. It turns it off. So you can't think rationally and clearly. That's the part of your brain that is needed for clear thinking. Being unable to forgive also messes with your digestive system. It can cause you to be constipated, or for some people, it can cause diarrhea. Being able to forgive affects your sleep patterns. You have trouble going to sleep, you might have trouble staying asleep, so you don't get your proper rest, and you know what happens if you don't get your proper rest. That's going to make you irritable and prone to fly off the handle at the slightest provocation. You're going to be pissed off all the time. And while it's doing all that, unforgiveness also causes your body to produce excess adrenaline and cortisone, because that anxiety is translated by your body as stress. And so that's the fight or flight syndrome. So your body's ready to fight, your body's ready to run, and it doesn't know where to go because there's nothing to run from, there's nothing to fight. But what that does, all that extra adrenaline and cortisol depletes the production of your body's natural killer cells. It messes with your immune system. And you know you need your immune system to fight off diseases. Diseases like the flu, diseases like cancer, diseases like the measles. Dr. Michael Berry, who was a physician at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, which is a huge organization. It's got branches in every state in the country just about. But Dr. Berry wrote a book called The Forgiveness Project. And what he says in The Forgiveness Project is that they discovered at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America that 61% of incoming patients have unforgiveness issues. 61%. But hey, cancer isn't the only danger that you have to face when that anxiety and stress take over your body. If left unchecked, that continuous and chronic anxiety / stress can cause high blood pressure. It can cause heart disease, give you a heart attack, give you a stroke, promote obesity, and even diabetes. It's ugly. It is actually ugly what unforgiveness can do to you. It is ugly. So you can begin to see why I'm saying that forgiveness is like a pair of skis. With skis, you glide over that deep snow of fear and stress and turmoil. But without skis, you struggle through this snow that is up to your thighs sometimes. And you know, trying to walk through deep snow, what that's like. Progress is slow, it's exhausting, and eventually you're just worn out and you're stuck. You can't move. So that deep snow is the negative state of your emotions and your thinking and your well-being. That deep snow is dangerous for you. Very dangerous. So, I've heard people say, I can never forgive something like that. I can never forgive. Now, I can understand the sentiment. I can understand how you might feel that way about certain things. But let's get something clear. Forgiveness is not for the other person. When you forgive, you're releasing something for you. It's for you. It's not for the other person. Forgiveness is not condoning what the other person did. Not at all. Forgiveness is to free you from the devastating disease that can possibly kill you. That's what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is for you releasing the effects of what that person did. It's not your job to get them back. It's not your job to declare punishment upon them in order to ease your pain. No, your job is to free yourself of that pain and resentment and anger. That's what your job is. Your job is to let it go. If they broke the law, let the law take care of it. If they broke the law, let the law take care of it. What you need to do is save yourself. Save yourself by letting go and moving on. Which, when you think about it, is actually a sign of higher spiritual awareness. Because only by understanding that you are more than a human being, you are a human you're not a human being having a spiritual experience. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. And if you can link into that spiritual side of yourself, which takes you to a higher level, which takes you out of the mud and the muck of all the mess we go through on the physical plane, by not being attached to that, then you're actually rising above. And here's another thing. Not being able to forgive someone else backfires on you because there's a hidden trap in there. Because you also need to forgive yourself. Surprise. You see, when you're experiencing that extended pain and resentment against someone else, you're also turning it back upon yourself. Remember, they say when you point your finger, there's one finger is pointing outward, but the other fingers are pointing back at you. So when you're blaming someone else, and internally you're also blaming yourself, you're beating yourself up for letting that happen. How did I let this happen? How come I didn't see it coming? I was so stupid to have believed that. Yeah, you do that to yourself. I know you don't think about it. It just runs on and on and on. It's called self-talk. But all that self-talk, all that eternal anger is directed back at you. And most of the time you aren't even aware of it. You know that? So the process of forgiveness is not complete until you learn to forgive yourself. And here's the kicker. Until you can forgive yourself, you will never let yourself grow, either on the physical plane or on the spiritual plane. You will not let yourself grow because you have got this grudge that you're holding against yourself. How could I have let that happen to me? I am so stupid. So one of the things I've come to realize, and I've come to realize this about people as well as myself, that negative internal self-talk that we heap upon ourselves actually borders on being criminal. And so until we learn to forgive ourselves, we attack ourselves constantly with thousands of negative internal messages every day. We call ourselves stupid. We tell ourselves that we will never get there, wherever there is. We tell ourselves that we don't have what it takes. We tell ourselves that we're losers. We tell ourselves that the other people outside of us are better than we are. We tell ourselves that we're imposters and we're not qualified to be in the job that we currently hold, the job we really like, but we know there's this inner fear that somebody's going to find out the truth and get rid of us. You know, the Academy Award-winning actress Olivia Davis admitted that it took her a long time. She used to, whenever she started on a new job, she was always afraid that when she got there, they would figure out that she didn't know what she was doing and would fire her. Brilliant actress that she is. But finally, she won an Academy Award, and she began to believe that there was nothing to worry about. So you and I need to learn to love ourselves and to forgive ourselves. Now, self-forgiveness is a relatively recent concept. You know, there was forgiveness, and then as they learned more about forgiveness, they began to realize that there was another level to it called self-forgiveness. And so they began to explore that. Scientifically, self-forgiveness is considered within the broader framework of self-compassion as a higher level of being. Remember, I tell you over and over again, you are an individualized expression of infinite intelligence. Infinite intelligence. Infinite intelligence is expressing as you. Why? Because infinite intelligence is all there is. Infinite intelligence will not separate you from itself to punish you. It can't, because you are made of the essence of infinite intelligence. It's impossible for infinite intelligence to separate from you, because infinite intelligence is you. And infinite intelligence loves you because infinite intelligence loves itself and every expression of itself. But you have the power to separate yourself. You have the power to separate yourself mentally from infinite intelligence. And when you separate yourself from infinite intelligence, then you are putting yourself out there all alone. It's not like you're really separated, but you can close yourself off so that you don't have to accept what infinite intelligence has to give you. You know, like a petulant child, you can turn your back and hold your breath. And that's what the dark forces want you to do. They want you to separate yourself from infinite intelligence. They want you vulnerable and on your own. So the slings and arrows that they throw at you are going to have a greater effect in this physical world. But you don't have to put up with that. If you open yourself up to infinite intelligence and the powerful love that infinite intelligence offers you, then you are protected from the full force of those dark intentions, those dark forces. You are protected. You are protected. Remember the words of the 91st Psalm. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely He will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. 91st Psalm. So if you cannot forgive yourself, you will suffer from diminished self-esteem. And that lack of respect for yourself is going to make you vulnerable. With that lack of self-respect, you will suffer. You will suffer. You believing that you are not worthy will cut you off from that divine protection and will leave you vulnerable. Science defines self-forgiveness as a moral repair strategy in which perpetrators, orient toward positive values by making a decision to accept responsibility for wrongdoing and align their behavior with positive values in the future, as well as B, restoring esteem by replacing self-condemning emotions with self-affirming emotions. Self-affirming emotions. I simply say, forgive yourself and love yourself. Remember, love uplifts and expands. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself, and you will open yourself up to all the love and protection that infinite intelligence has to offer. Forgive yourself. Infinite intelligence is waiting for you. Forgive yourself. Infinite intelligence is always there. And if you call upon it, knowing that you are the child of the creator of the universe, then the creator of all things, seen and unseen, will take care of you. Infinite intelligence will take care of you. That's good to know. Infinite intelligence will take care of you. You know, there's a prayer that I say to myself all day, actually, over and over and over again. It was a prayer of protection that was written by a man named James Dillett Freeman during World War II when he was out on the battlefield. It's a great poem, and like I said, I'm always saying it. Whenever I think of it, I'm always saying it. It sort of runs automatically through my head. And that poem is, "The light of God surrounds me. The love of God enfolds me. The power of God protects me. And the presence of God watches over me. Wherever I am, God is."